So, I'm Kirsten. I'm going to stand up here. I'm very uncomfortable standing up here, but I'm going to do that because I'm not the tallest person in the world, and if I hop down, you probably won't be able to see me. So I will stay up here, but I'll probably forget about that and move down at some point. I'm kicking off today for the team with some thoughts on change. So we're all here about mastering change and adoption. And what I do is I work with organizations on the people side of change, because you're all here interested in systems, but those get used by people. And it's really important to remember that your user adoption is dependent on how you manage your change. So I've been doing this for a very, very long time. I know I look very young, but I'm not. I've been doing it for a very, very long time in lots of different countries all over the world. I currently reside in Switzerland. I feel very lucky about that. It's a bit warmer than here, so I'm quite happy to be in the cool climes of the UK talking to you. And what I'm going to do today is talk about change at a really quite a high level. So during the day you'll hear case studies of implementations that bring it back to this is real life, this is how it works. But what I'm going to do is take you up to the macro level of change and hopefully give you some useful ideas, some useful content to take back with you so that you can think about managing your change in a way that's going to be successful. So I quite like my very first slide because I think it sort of tells a story that I see quite often. We all want change, and when it comes down to doing it, everyone puts their arms down, yeah? I talk about leading change for a reason, and I'll go into that in a moment, but wanted to ask you a quick question just to get us started. So, how much change is happening in your organization? Hands up anyone who's got zero, absolutely none, no change whatsoever in your organization. Hands up who's got between 0 and 5 changes happening in your organization. Hands up who's got between 5 and 15 changes happening in your organization. And hands up who's got so much change you can't count it. Right. And that's why talking about change and how to do it well is really, really important. So I could throw some statistics out at you. 70% of change efforts apparently aren't as successful as they should be. I think there's a reason for that, and that's why I want to talk to you today about leading change. Because I get a sense in the organizations that I go into that people feel like that. My cup overfloweth, and not with joy, with saturation of change. So I think we need to be thinking about how to do this in a different way. So what I mean when I say lead change. So everyone's heard of change management, yeah? Hopefully. The purpose of change management is to manage a change process with a defined beginning and a defined end, and the whole point of it is to deliver it on time and on budget, and with the least amount of disruption to your organization that you can manage. And it goes like that. Okay? I think, and perhaps you'll agree, we live in an environment where in reality, what it looks like is kind of like that. There's no one change that's nice and tidily finished before the next one starts. Yeah? So you may be halfway through one, and then the next one's coming down the pipeline, or maybe they're running in parallel. And like I say, what I believe is that people are starting to feel saturated by it. And so the purpose of leading change as opposed to managing it is to have your end state well defined. You're never going to get it 100% because that doesn't exist. But to have it good enough to know that people understand that's where we're trying to go, that's where we want to go with this. Okay? So what happens to people when they're confronted with change? Is anyone familiar with the change curve? Yes. So it was it was discovered by a lady called Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, an American who actually lived in Zurich in Switzerland, so I feel a kinship to her. And what she did is she worked with dying patients and discovered that people actually go through several stages as they go through the process. And you can actually liken that quite a lot to what happens to people emotionally when they're confronted with change. And so they start off with shock. Oh my God, seriously? Everything's perfect. Why would we change it? Leave it alone. Yeah? And that's going on in the psyche of the people. And then you have some other people who are quite happy about it, because they're the people that, when they were kids, used to stick their fingers in the plugs. They like new things. They're curious. You have those too. You have a stage that most of us go through, which is feeling distressed, feeling anxious. I don't understand. I don't know what's going to happen. Okay? And the most important part, I think, to think about is one of the stages is grief, because when people have to leave something behind, they feel grief. Whether that's a broken process, doesn't matter. It's still a process that they know and are familiar with. And then we can go to the angry stage, not happy about this, and this is the point in a change process where your people who just don't feel they need to do this to themselves will leave. Okay? Others will stay around and create a little toxic environment where they're bleating. Yeah? Me, change, me, don't like it. Yeah? And that goes on in organizations. And then you move through different stages where you're starting to get the hang of it, you're starting to feel, okay, well maybe this could be good, maybe this is going to be better, and you move through and come out the end with a happy smiley face. It's not a linear process. People can progress through the curve and fall back again. Some people jump from here to here. It really depends. It's a very personal thing. But as I said, the most important one to watch out for and to allow as part of the process is the grieving, because people have to be allowed to grieve for things that they're losing. And the human is designed to care more about losing than gaining. It's an odd evolutionary thing that we've got in us. Our brains are designed to do that. So it's a really important part of the process to support. And what is it that we're concerned about losing? Well, if you've been doing something in some way for many, many years, you have a certain level of confidence. You feel good about it. And being confronted with a situation where you no longer feel that confidence can be quite difficult from an emotional perspective. We all like to look credible. None of us like to look not credible. I was going to say incredible, but that's probably something we do like to look like. Competent. We like to be competent. We need to have a sense of, I know what I'm doing. And the biggest thing that people fear losing is comfort. Because, again, our brains are designed to be lazy. Really, really, really lazy. And learning a new thing requires 40% more energy for your brain than doing something you've done for ages. And so your brain, because it's designed to keep you safe, doesn't want to spend energy learning new stuff. Because when you're standing in your cave and you're about to walk out, if your brain energy is being used to learn new things, it's not available to see the saber-toothed tiger and to decide to run away. And that's actually an evolutionary fact of how our brains work. So it's a lazy old thing, and we have to force it to really want to learn new things. In fact, it doesn't. So we really have to make a conscious decision to do that. So I want to play a game with you, because there's another really important element to how we manage change and to how we see the world. And I want to ask you, I'm going to pop up a picture in a moment, and I want to ask you to identify the objects, and you've got 4 whole seconds to do that. I know, I'm very, very, very generous with the time I'm going to give you. So you've got 4 seconds to identify the objects, and then I want you just to shout out to me what it is that you've seen.
Chaos.
Chaos, chaos.
Marlboro cigarette.
Oh, there you go. Marlboro cigarettes. Are you an ex-smoker?
It was for
toaster.
Right? Yeah. What else did you see? Pizza. Are you hungry? Did you not have breakfast? Are you hungry? What else? Panda. Horse. Did anyone see the blue elephant? Good, because there isn't one, it's a blue shark. Okay? The reason I play that game is just to make the point that the things that we experience shape our view of the world. They shape what we perceive in the world. What did you see?
I saw a laptop first.
What else did you see? Me standing in front of you,
Yeah.
blocking your view.
Partially.
Yeah, partially. Because sometimes we've got stuff in our way blocking our view. And so we see the things that we're familiar with, we see the things that we care about, we see the things that we know, that we have some kind of relation to. So when I play this at lunchtime, the Toblerone and the pizza are the most seen items. Yeah? So it also can be a time perspective of what's important to me right now. And so it's really, really important to be aware of the fact that you're also perceiving change through your lens, which won't necessarily be the same as the lens of the person sitting next to you, okay? So everyone's going to be looking at this in a different way. See, I've hopped off. You can't see me now. Hopped off, can't help it. So be aware of that. Think about that. You're looking at it through your lens, and so is everyone else, okay? Remember the curve. We're all going through it differently. We're all feeling it differently. It's really important. It's a very individual thing. So just have a little think about that. And there's something else that I want to share with you which I think explains quite a lot. So just as an anecdote, I'm using my laptop today. Normally we load all the slides onto Richard's laptop. And the last time we were speaking together in Edinburgh, I did that, and my slides didn't work. So I made an experience that led me to believe that Richard's not to be trusted. Okay? Which led me to the action of bringing my own laptop, despite the fact that it's heavy and it's hot and I didn't want to, with the result that you're going to have to tolerate us changing laptops when I'm done. Okay? Now, the reason I show this is in an organization it works very similarly, and organizations need to get what? What do they need to get? It's up there. Results, yeah? Whatever that looks like. And if I, as an organization, want to get results, then we need to take actions. We need to do stuff, yes? If I don't get the results that I want, what am I going to do? Take different actions. It's called reorganizing. It's called implementing new processes. It's called implementing new systems. You're smiling. You're familiar with it. It's called designing new jobs, adding some more silos into the system, yeah? Because I want to get different results. But what that actually is a focus on the things that won't make the difference. The things that make the difference are the organizational beliefs which come through the experiences that people make on a daily basis. So perhaps you've experienced this. You've got a new colleague who's joined the organization. Perhaps you've been a new colleague joining an organization. And you've gone to lunch with other colleagues and you've asked the question, how does stuff work around here? Has anyone ever experienced that? Why do you do that? Because everyone has? Everywhere's different, absolutely. And you need to understand how stuff gets done around here, right? Because you don't want to stand out. So what happens when you stand out in a not good way? What happens? You get punished, right? You do, you get punished. So you make an experience that I've just been punished, leads to a belief, don't do that again, leads to an action of, I'll just keep my arms down. What does that do for results? Stay the same, exactly. And we're here to talk about change. And you're implementing a new system because you need to improve, right? Which is also change. Okay? So the reason I share this with you is because I do think it's really, really important to be conscious of the fact that the experiences, the beliefs, and the actions are what make up an organizational culture. Okay? And an organizational culture is a really, really viral thing. It's like tribbles. It multiplies very, very quickly and very easily. Okay? And organizations need to think about their culture, and they need to actively manage their culture. Because what happens if you don't? It goes out of control. And it's the thing that actually will shape your results. It's not the systems. It's not the processes. It's not your hierarchical structure. It's not how many boxes you've got in the org chart. It's what's going on day to day in the experiences of the people in your organization, including you. Yeah? So you need to be thinking about it. And it's easy to focus up here, because that's the nice, hard, factual stuff that we like in business. This stuff down here is the fluffy stuff that gets shoved off to the HR department, generally. I know, I worked in an HR department for 15 years. People, oh, it's HR. It's not. It's everyone. So don't focus up there, because you won't get the results that you need to get. And you're part of this. Okay? So when you're thinking about your systems implementation, think about the people side. Because I'm a bit in love with Albert Einstein. There's a Swiss theme to my presentation, have you noticed? I'm a bit in love with him because insanity is, I think, doing the same thing again and again and again and again and expecting a different outcome. And if 70% of change efforts are still failing after all these years of all these change gurus being out there telling people how to do it, then clearly there's something not working and we need to rethink it and think about how to do it differently. So, because you've heard enough of me talking, I want to now play a little something for you. And I think it's quite a nice way of understanding the part we all have to play in change, the part we all need to be consciously managing.
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen start to finish in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. So it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out and you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut, and it's not 2 nuts. 3 is a crowd, and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone needs to see the followers, because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, then 3 more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point, and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. And over the next minute you'll see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'd be ridiculed for not joining. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making everything clearly about the movement, not you. Be public, be easy to follow. But the biggest lesson here, did you catch it? Leadership is overglorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless guy, and he'll get all the credit, but you saw what really happened. It was the first follower that transformed a lone nut into a leader. There's no movement without the first follower. See, we're told that we all need to be leaders, but that would be really ineffective. The best way to make a movement, if you really care, is to courageously follow and show others how to follow. When you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first person to stand up and join in.
I felt you all wanting to get up there and dance with him. I felt that. You should have done that. That would have been great. So the reason I show this video, and some of you have seen me speak before, and I'm using the same video because I just think it's a really, really great way of making the point that leading change isn't down to whoever's got the biggest title or the biggest car or the biggest salary in the organization. It's down to each and every one of us. And I get asked quite a lot by individuals, what can I do? I'm not in a position of authority yet. How can I lead change? And I say, well, there must be something you can do. Think about it from a different angle. Change your perspective. Think back to the slide with all the different things on it. What could you take as a different approach? Is there a business case you can write? Is there an STP you could write? Is there what could you do? Or could you just actually be an advocate for what you're doing and pull people with you? Generate enthusiasm, movement. And keep it simple. A colleague of mine uses the reference of the Tesco shopping experience when she's talking about systems implementations. And yeah, I'm a Luddite. I need it to be really easy. If you make it complicated, I'm not going to use it. And it's the same thing. You know, your people need to just be able to click to where they want to go. And I say that having implemented I don't know how many HR systems that make me lose the will to live. I can't pull a report. What am I supposed to do with that? So what do? I go back to using Excel. Yeah, because I need to make it work for me, and that's what your people in your organization need. It needs to work for them. So think back to how can you create experiences that change the beliefs in the organization and that will help you to shift your culture. I'm just very conscious of the time because any minute now a bell should ring. So are there any questions? And I've been told I need to go and fetch a microphone or repeat the questions back. Are there any questions around what I've talked about, or thoughts or comments? Have you not had enough coffee? Do you need some more? Can we organise some, please, people at the back? So I think you need to consciously design into your change program the people side, the human side, and think about that when you're planning for your implementation. And your change management plan should run in parallel to your project management plan, okay? I sometimes feel like I'm preaching to the converted, and yet I still see too much of this not being successful, so that tells me there is still room for improvement. And really think about actually managing it, rather than just chucking a load of stuff into the budgie cage and seeing if the birdie pecks. Because that's the random approach that I see happening quite a lot. I also like to call that the spaghetti principle, chuck enough against the wall and see if anything will stick. Yeah? Think about managing it in a really nice, tidy way, and think about maybe getting an external perspective and a perspective from someone that's not working with you. Because if you're looking at it from IT, which I presume you guys are, there's maybe some other people in the organization that could help you take a look at it from a different angle and help you to think about things that you maybe haven't thought about, okay? Because it's up to you. Accountability is owning it. It's not being punished for doing stuff wrong. It's actually what it means is owning stuff, seeing it and saying, yeah, I will do something with this. And the more accountable we can become in organizations on managing change, on leading change, on making this a great process, the better experience with change we will generate, and the less eye-rolling will happen when the next one is announced, because people will start to feel it from a different angle, from a different perspective. Okay? So, I'm a little bit ahead of schedule. I can feel the heat in this room. I'm struggling. Have I got a nice shiny face? I feel like I've got a very shiny face. So I'll ask again, are there any questions or any thoughts or any things that I can help you with? There's a young chap over here. You're very welcome, sir. Yes.
Yeah, I just thought it'd be worth asking if there's anything you would say is a big no-no for a business about to embark upon a big IT systems change which affects the way people work. So on a practical level, I mean, that was great, but on a practical level, what actually should people avoid doing? And I suppose what perhaps should they do? Maybe one or two takeaways.
So I think one of the biggest things that needs to be done differently is, have you heard of creating the burning platform? Yeah, so it's about generating urgency behind the change. Yeah? What creating a burning platform actually does in the insular part of your brain is to trigger the fight or flight response. So there is a reason why people tell you to do it, because yeah, you do need urgency, you do need momentum for it, but not one based on fear. So when then people are resisting the change, that's why. And the fact that the brain's lazy. But it's actually because they're terrified of what's going to happen. So I think it's about creating a picture of a better tomorrow. I know that doesn't sound very practical, but don't panic, people. We must change because we must save costs. Oh, that means redundancies. Or we must do this, we must change the way we're working, we'll redesign the organization. That means loss of credibility. Yeah? So if you can make it in a way that it becomes more of a vision of a future that is going to be better, then that, I think, is something to be really careful around and something to pay attention to. And you will have millennials in your organization. Yeah? Maybe one or two. Maybe three. These guys are looking for a sense of purpose. They're not happy to just do a job, right? Most of us, if we're honest, are looking for a sense of purpose. We've just been trained to stop thinking about it. But these guys are you can use them. You can use them as your pull engine, because they'll get excited about it and they'll start pulling the others through. And because they're digitally savvy, it's easy for them. And you can ask them to help the colleagues who are as old as me, who don't find it so easy. You can actually pair them up and get them to help, pull them through. So I think be very, very careful about your communication and your messaging. I think you can't underestimate the impact, the negative impact you can have if you get the words wrong. Because even a word triggers stress in people. And when you start getting into stress overload because there's all this communication coming out that's not great for your brain and for your body, you're going to end up in a situation where it will very quickly spiral out of control. Does that even answer the question? Yeah? Okay. Any other questions?
You talked a lot about culture.
Can I just borrow
Obviously, culture takes a long time to establish itself. It's not something you can change overnight. How do you use this approach to actually influence and change culture in as fast as quite possible?
So the question was, culture takes quite a long time. It's quite it takes time to affect a culture, to change a culture. So how do you do it? Believe it or not, yes, to change a culture completely can take 2 or 3 years. But by being very, very conscious in the experiences that you're creating, and by that I mean that managers actually allow feedback rather than just saying they do. That people listen to feedback rather than just throwing it out there and I've ticked the box, I've done it. Yeah? If you want a feedback culture, do it. Every single day. Not once a year when it's annual review time. Okay? If you want a collaborative culture, how does your bonus work? Does your bonus encourage collaboration? So look beyond the obvious. What are the processes and the things in your organization that are supporting the behavior you want or not supporting it? And there's an element around expectation management. So I train managers on certain things, on how to effectively manage their people. And one of the things I see is they're not really as good as I think they should be on setting expectations. This is what I want you to do, and this is when I want you to do it by. How you do it is up to you. But being really, really clear on what people are supposed to deliver, to empower them to actually be able to work together, and that's where collaboration comes from. We were talking about this yesterday, weren't we, Andy? Where having a great set of directions, that's the outcome we want, and this is by when I want it, that bit's usually missing in the sentence, isn't it? And then letting the teams get on with working out how to deliver it will generate a collaborative environment. So it's about everyday experiences, and it's about taking a really, really precise look at the things that are hindering you from making that cultural change. And it's about having a very long breath, because it is a long process. But the more impactful the first few changes are, the quicker the process will actually pull through. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
There's no quick fix, I'm afraid. Yeah, it's people. They're notoriously difficult. So there's been no fire alarm, that's excellent. Fine. Any other questions? Okay. Yes. Oh.
Peter's picking up on what you're saying about maybe getting words wrong, or that also people aren't necessarily as good at what they think they are as they think they are. And I'm thinking particularly about communications, and that a lot of stakeholders, including senior stakeholders, communication teams, ourselves even, perhaps aren't as good at communicating as we should be. What kind of advice would you suggest?
So I think we have a certain level of habit around our communication. We're doing that like we've always done it. And there's new research available on how the brain works. And my advice would be get on that. Yeah, it's called neuroscience. People get put into MRIs and they test stuff with them. I train people on stuff like that myself. Really start paying more attention and learn new stuff. So I really think people need to be learning more around neuroscience and the effects of language on our brain. Because you can actually, for instance, you can actually draw on a flip chart, plus, minus, neutral, and you can plot words. Yeah? So, for instance, stress. Is that a positive or a negative word? On a scale of 0 to minus 100, would it be about 50? Would it be about 70? Would it be 100? About 70. Right, so you can actually plot them like that. So that's a practical thing you can get your people to do. Draw a flip chart and write the communication, then plot the words.
I've noticed that with consultation, which people like to talk about consulting the staff, but to staff, that often means redundancies.
Exactly. And it's about meaning, yeah? And so it goes back to the perspective of senior management is very different to the perspective of the employee, right? And so senior management needs to think about the world through the eyes of an employee. Maybe ask them. I don't know, I'm just putting that out there as an idea. Just ask them, yeah? And move away from this paternalistic kind of behavior that we've still got quite a lot of kind of saying, I'm your father, you must do what I tell you. And we're going back to the pyramid, right? The stuff up here that's happening is stuff being pushed onto people. And when you push things onto people, you take away their options.
And how do you, though, prevent that kind of paternalistic approach?
Wish you hadn't asked that. So I have a very clear view on that. Don't hire people who behave like that. I'm sorry, but you know, how do you prevent it? So I think we have people who've learned management skills from a different sort of time that aren't quite so current anymore, that aren't really working so well anymore. They have a vested interest to keep it that way, possibly. I don't know, subtle suggestion, hypnosis, no. But show them. You be the lead, show them that it can be done differently. And create enough momentum behind you, right? So you'll be the dancing guy, and we'll all be behind you going, yeah. Create more momentum, show them. Prove the point. Because your numbers will improve. When your numbers improve, they start paying attention. Yeah? I'm not sure I answered the question, but... Okay. Any other questions? Are we good? All right. Lovely. You've been lovely. Thank you for smiling at me. It's always nice when you're presenting and people smile back at you. I hope you found what I've said useful. I'll be around all day, just in case you forgot what I looked like. I'll be around all day. Feel free to come and talk to me if you've got any questions that you want to ask offline. I will look forward to speaking to you. And if not, I'll look forward to seeing you later for a drink. All right. Thank you so much. You've been lovely.